I received a message on Facebook from our listener Mike King. Mike King is one of these people, I've just got to editorialize this before I start talking about Mike King's question, who I'm really thankful to present audio for. I think of a number of different people. I have these kind of archetype listeners in my head that represent the various people that listen to this thing. And Mike King, I'm just really, really pleased that I've been able to create some degree of vocal cognitive outreach to folks such as Mike King. I won't editorialize too much about this, although Mike King just, for me, lives a utopian life. He has a farm, he has work practices, he farms and does work. His farm, to me, strikes me like all my after-hours projects, and I wish all my after-hours projects could embody themselves in a farm. What an amazing farm it would be. So Mike King, thank you for this question. I made a YouTube video recently talking about how creating content, which is literally doing what I'm doing currently, is a means of assaulting both political and intellectual shortfalls in terms of freedom shortfalls. Like, you want political freedom, you'd want intellectual freedom, but what has occurred contemporarily is I equate it to fascism. I read very heavily associated with the Second World War to really give myself a nuanced sense of how what the etiquette is within a fascist society. And the behaviors and the means that one has to conduct oneself in a society where you have limited political freedom, and here, referencing a prior podcast, what I'm saying explicitly here is that there's very little difference, very little political difference between the two major parties in this country, but there are prescribed behaviors which both parties demand, which just completely eliminates the freedom of discussion. What I'm so surprised from 2016 to today, how the narrative has been completely rewritten, and any means of dissent just isn't even communicable politically. But I want to move that aside. I want to talk about what this does to intellectual freedom and the damage that it does to intellectual freedom. Now, you might say, well, Tom, even with this nonsense that you have to deal with associated with your 22-year project and some loser comedian dude, whatever he might be, even through this thing, you still have the ability to produce stuff with noble aim. Well, I can't argue with that. And I still do produce stuff with noble aim. I don't even care, really, about it. It doesn't really inhibit us, aside from the fact that all the oxygen has been taken out of the room, that people that would discover my stuff organically have another barrier to discover my stuff because of what this individual has done. And also seeing the way this individual has used just paid for everything. Everything is paid for, right? Google searches, you can just eliminate that. YouTube views, you can just eliminate that. Every means that you have to create content, someone can take that away from you purely through financial means. So what you have here is not really a level playing field associated with intellectual freedom. You have something that is suffocated, and here, actually, directly, someone's actively suffocated this from me, which is very, very curious. But also, just in terms of what you say, the pervasive political forces, also in terms of what you say, the pervasive political forces in this country means that you can't talk about a variety of things. This is exactly what happened in the Nazi state. They eliminated the means of talking about a variety of things, focus it down on a subset, and then within that subset it was very, very tightly controlled. And certainly I find that every aspect of this society I find just completely exhausting, associated with having divergent intellectual thought. So what you have to do here is construct little bits and pieces. You have to create any means necessary to, work ideas through. And actually, there are two components here, I guess. There are incredibly repressive normative forces, which codify speech and require, different ways of looking at things. And unfortunately, professionally, I have to do that. I have no choice about that. But secondarily, there is an aspect where even if you create new ideas, how do you actually express those new ideas in ways that other people will receive them? And the culture associated with the smallest, simplest possible thing to be communicated, Dawkins primarily, let's take the smallest possible idea here, try to communicate this, let's make that thing into a bigger thing. If you have anything that is counteracting that or doing any interesting analysis with that, it's very, very difficult to get this information out. Now, honestly, what I've done in 15 odd years has been returning to almost like an intellectual heritage, not interacting in ways where ideas would get out through normal percolation. I've tried very selectively through various bits and pieces, but I have to almost self-censor a variety of the ideas that I'd like to float. I'm trying more through music, more through writing, more through a variety of different things to get ideas out. Certainly with the music, I'm getting a lot of enjoyment currently. But actually, the broader ideas that I want to communicate that have historically been contained within Noble Ape, I'm in two minds. Do I need a different vehicle? Has this vehicle been completely polluted? It's just like all this effort has just gone to nothing for what appears to be relatively random, aggressive acts, either purposefully done by this individual or just as part of some shotgun approach. So within this thing, I've got to find ways of going forward. And I think what you see through these recordings and also through the development, I try to maintain the Facebook group and actually post photos in the Facebook group and these kind of things. So, you'll have references at least through the Facebook group, but also through communicating with me, as many people do. What I try to do with these recordings is actually set almost a framework for producing stuff, explaining the methodologies, explaining the reasons why I do these things. And that is a means of attacking what I think is a very simplified, and complexity has a PR problem. Complexity, as I would describe it with regards to the things that I do, immediately alienate people almost instantly. Part of what has gone on really in the past 50 years has been a movement away from complexity, very simple ideas, and if you go too far, then immediately you lose an audience. The love of complexity, of many components, of learning in a variety of different directions. The love of complexity and the ability to learn in a wide variety of different directions and actually excitement through this, it's a lost thing. It's a lost thing. And how I choose to describe things going forwards is, I think, the greatest challenge. I have a project which I put out in description form, which I will record a couple of pilots for and probably put in this very recording. The podcast is called My Rules Are Better. And it is a means of describing probability and using probability practically in gameplay, be it role-playing games, be it role-playing games, be it war games with miniatures, all this kind of stuff. And using the ability for individuals to actually create their own rule sets and use this as an ability for individuals to actually create their own rule sets and return to building fantastic worlds, exploration. Now, people would argue existing role-playing games, existing war games have this element, but I think the concern, the critique that I give in My Rules Are Better is simple. A lot of these companies that produce these rule sets do them independently of any rational purpose. It's an economic thing. It needs to be revisioned and move in a variety of different directions. And the complexity, it actually has an economic purpose. The reason a number of these rule sets are so complicated is so you buy more of them, but more importantly that it is difficult to master, right? Games do not have to be this way. And particularly powerful simulation and probability-based games do not have to be complicated at all. In fact, it's the interaction, the nuanced interaction of the lesser complicated rule sets that I want to actually advocate for in My Rules Are Better. So, Mike King, I'm trying to chisel away at things that I find, curb intellectual freedom, let's just say. And that is an ongoing thing. It's something that I'm doing through a variety of different methods, but I'll try to outline more in this podcast. I hope I've answered your question, Mike King. I've got a wide variety of other stuff going on, visual recording, all this kind of stuff, but I hope, in essence, I've answered your question.